Welcome back to As It Happens. This week, politicians are trying their hand at television presenting. I'm Pule Mabe from the ANC. My special guest this evening is Matlasi. She's the chairperson of SANEF, the South African National Editors Forum. Journalism, we all agree, is the cornerstone of a successful democracy. But how do we make the fourth estate work responsibly? How do political parties and the media navigate what is often contested terrain, particularly as we ramp up to an election in 2019? The role of the media in nation building and preservation of quality journalism. Now, Matlasi, what is the attitude of SANEF towards fake news and the growing reliance of society towards social media?
Look, I think we must separate the two things. I think there's fake news, which we are characterizing as a misinformation campaign that is out there. We are very concerned about it. And especially, Pule, as you rightfully say, we are leading up to the 2019 elections. And we have seen the numerous reports about the role of fake news or this misinformation campaign in the American elections. And we are saying that we have to seriously guard against it. We have campaigned to try and make citizens aware that there is fake news out there, and we are hoping that this is a campaign that political parties like the ANC will join, especially because it can be so damaging to our democracy, especially as we go to the 2019 elections.
What would you say? I mean, I thought that you will also reflect on what SANEF is doing to mitigate on this reliance. One, make sure that there are balance and checks currently in place to avoid unfair reporting. So that you also make sure that you focus on news that also empower citizens. What are those balance and checks in place? Okay,
let me start in terms of the misinformation campaigns or the fake news. As SANEF, we have been on an aggressive campaign to educate society around what to actually look out for. Things like, for example, the fact that you've got websites that are mimicking real news websites, and you can see you have to take a second look at those websites to see that these are not actual websites. We've also warning the public continuously to be aware when, there was a sad episode where somebody was saying that the Archbishop Desmond Tutu had passed away, and this was an example of fake news. And what we are saying is that we have to quickly identify it, and also the public to know if there isn't a major broadcaster or a major news organization covering this, then it definitely is fake news. In terms of what we are doing to ensure that the media plays a fair game, and I think that is the question that you're asking.
Yes.
As SANEF, we continue to talk about quality news. We continuously say to our members that we have to be the guardians of truth, because that is what we do. We continue to talk about, we continue to do training on journalists where necessary with other partners to ensure that journalists actually abide by the rules of the games as said by the press code and also by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission.
Well, Matlasi, sometimes you find that the headlines to your own stories do not necessarily match the body text. Is this done perhaps to try and drive profits, increase circulations against what could be truthful, because that becomes harmful to individuals who are so mentioned?
That is against the press code, hey? Yes. Because in terms of the press code, the headline must be reasonably reflecting of the content of those stories. And, I think that the media has learned quite a lot from it. We had an experience just a few years ago where, for example, the Sunday Times was taken up on a headline the way they had to actually apologize to the former minister, Ronnie Kasrils. And, we remember we all woke up on Sunday to lampposts of the publication apologizing. And I think since then, there has really been checks and balances. I think it would be a lazy answer for anybody to say, it's the subs that ended up changing the headlines. As media practitioners, we have to make sure that the headlines reflect what is the content of the story. It would be wrong for us to actually lie in our headlines or not have a story that actually reflects or to have a headline that doesn't reflect our stories.
But does SANEF engage either in boss barats, open talk shops with all media houses that subscribe to it to make sure that the understanding of the code is deepened? You will know, Matlasi, that there's been a great worry that most of our newsrooms are juniorized. What do we do to make sure that we can hold you responsible and accountable in that regard? Because we who also hold public office tend to sometimes in the conduct of our own work, pick up some of those things. What is being done? Because we need each other in this trade. We need the media. The media need us as well. So,
you don't always see that
so we need to make sure that we maintain this Valentine mood between ourselves. So what do we do to make sure that we wipe off those instances where they rear their ugly head?
You know, the generalization of the newsroom is not an excuse for suspending the press code or the Broadcasting Complaints Commission.
Yes.
And we have made it quite clear. Actually, the only thing that stands us strong against fake news is when media houses do the stories properly.
Yes.
Because then the audiences will be able to see the difference between fake and really researched stories. So those conversations continue in SANEF. There has been road shows, for example, between us and the Press Council in terms of talking to journalists about abiding by the press codes. As part of our plans this year as well is to ensure that we continue with the training because it is quite important that journalists continue doing journalism, because what we often see on social media is not journalism. It is people's opinion, it is what people are saying, but there has to be a distinction between media houses and the work that they produce and those that are out there publishing this fake news or those that are on social media. So that is a serious conversation that we continue to have, Pule. But I have to say, Pule, I mean, you know, I always say to politicians, and me and you have had this conversation repeatedly, to say, hold journalists accountable. The press ombudsman is there, the BCCSA is there, so that, you know, when you are aggrieved, you can actually go and complain. You know, phoning me and complaining doesn't resolve anything. You actually have to take the steps, because we do have regulatory frameworks to ensure that when journalists do get wrong, they have to apologize. And we've seen all of these changes that have happened in terms of the Press Council, where, you know, the apologies are no longer somewhere hidden somewhere. We've seen apologies in the front pages of newspapers. As I said, we've seen them on lampposts. So the changes are there, and we are urging everybody to continuously use it, because the Press Council, the Press Ombudsman is there for exactly that.
Well, before we go to the ad break, you'll also know that the Elderman report does talk about the decline of trust amongst South Africans, and the media itself will talk about this. When As It Happens continues, we'll all open the lines on the number 011-759-6340. You can raise any topic on the ANC, the party's relationship with the media, and policy clarity. Stay tuned to As It Happens. I'm Pule Mabe.